Pocket Life, Episode 2. I told you I'd be fine. Avery opened her eyes and stretched. She rubbed her eyes roughly with her knuckles and slowly turned in the bed to look at the clock on the table to her right. 7:38. "Damn!" she hissed as she leapt from the bed. She'd overslept by an hour, and she knew she'd be on a disciplinary if she turned up late for work for the third day in a row. She threw on her uniform, dragged her brush through her short, platinum blonde hair, and ran to the bathroom to scrub at her teeth viciously before throwing cold water at her face, clearing the last of her sleepiness. She grabbed a handful of biscuits that would serve as breakfast on the go, tossing them into her handbag as she snatched it up. She seized her blue coat and threw it around her shoulders, dashing through the front door and locking it behind her before dropping the keys thoughtlessly into her coat pocket. "Ouch!" came a shout from the pocket, which stopped Avery dead in her tracks. "Oh no," she cried, pulling the keys quickly from her pocket before carefully lifting out its inhabitant. "Are you trying to kill me?" demanded the tiny man, rubbing his head and shoulder, which had caught the full force of the falling keys. "First you spring me around like a sack of potatoes, and then you go and throw deadly weapons at me. Seriously, Avery?" "I'm so sorry, Milo. I'm late for work, and I can't be late again. I totally forgot you were in there and—" "Really? You just forgot about me? Gee, thanks for that. You sure know how to make a guy feel wanted. Stay with me, Milo. I'll keep you safe. I'd be lucky if I survive living with you." Avery's eyes narrowed angrily, but Milo could see that he had touched a nerve. "If you're going to carry on like that, I might be inclined to simply put you back where I found you, little bug. And in case you've forgotten, that was underwater." Milo tried to stand in Avery's hand, but he couldn't. "All right, firstly, if you call me a bug again, I might have to bite you." "Right, because bugs don't bite." Milo ignored her sarcastic interjection. "And secondly, I'm sorry. I know I haven't been the easiest person to live with this week." Avery sighed. "I'm sorry too. I really need to get to work on time now, though. I'm going to have to run. Do you want to stay in the house today?" "No way! If watching you work is boring, then waiting for you to finish work is bound to be worse." Avery scowled at him. "Fine, hold on tight in that case," she muttered as she lowered her little companion back into her pocket and set off at a sprint along the street. Her shift started at 8 and it was already 7:55. It was a 1-mile walk to work, which normally took her 15 to 20 minutes if she was walking, but she could make it in 5 if she really pushed herself. Unfortunately for Milo, Avery really pushing herself meant a very rough ride for him. He clung to the inside of the pocket as he was bounced up and down roughly, occasionally tumbling over himself and losing his grip on the soft blue fabric. Avery burst through the back door of the stationery supply shop as the manager lifted the catch and opened the customer entrance. "You're late," she said, without turning around. "I'm sorry, Susan," Avery gasped as she leaned against the counter to catch her breath. "But it has only just gone 8. Susan gave her a withering look. "Yes, and you should be the other side of that counter now. We will have to discuss your tardiness more formally after work, Avery." Milo groaned inside the pocket. All that bouncing around for nothing. Maybe he should have stayed at the house. Avery dragged herself defeatedly into the staff room and hung up her coat. She carefully extracted Milo and lowered him into her trouser pocket. He didn't really like it in there, but it was only until she got to the counter, where she placed him carefully beside the till, behind a display of ballpoint pens. "Be careful," she muttered. "I'll be fine. "I'll see you at 12 for lunch," he said quietly. "It's a stationery shop, Ave. What could happen?" Avery didn't answer him. Her first customer had arrived at the counter. Some kid, maybe 10 years old, buying some smiley face stickers. Milo ran to the end of the counter and leapt into a basket of stuffed toys, which he had found over the past week of coming here to be the easiest way to get down. The first time he did it, Avery had screamed, much to the concern of the customers and the annoyance of her manager. Quickly realizing that Milo was fine, she had made up some tale about seeing a spider running towards the shop door. The customers had seemed to buy it, but her manager didn't seem convinced. Milo had only known Avery for about 3 days by that point, and he was already well aware that she was in no way afraid of spiders. It stood to reason that Susan would be aware of this too. Milo didn't know the woman, but he thought she seemed somewhat suspicious of Avery. He didn't like the way she spoke to her, making her feel as small as Milo sometimes. He thought that if he were Avery's size, he would like to give Susan a taste of her own passive-aggressive medicine, and maybe a black eye. But he wasn't big enough to do that, so he tried not to dwell on how much he disliked the woman. Milo spent his morning much as he had done for the past week. He settled himself in an inconspicuous place in the shop window and watched the buzz of activity out on the high street. As much as he complained to Avery of wanting to see more of the world than this one little shop, he actually really enjoyed watching those massive people go about their lives. Occasionally, he would go for a walk around the shop, being careful, of course, to avoid feet, prams, wheelchairs, and the occasional assistance dog. The shop tended to get quite busy mid-morning with a lot of foot traffic, but Milo was very careful. He'd had a couple of close calls, one with a curious guide dog and one with a 2-year-old boy who had spotted him running underneath a display of notebooks, which had ended up all over the floor as the infant tried to catch him. He hadn't told Avery about the dog. Her reaction to the situation with the boy had scared him, not because she had got angry, but because she got protective, saying he couldn't go with her to work anymore, or if he did, he would need to stay in her trouser pocket at all times. Neither of these options were acceptable to Milo, but it had taken a number of hours for him to convince her that he would be okay. As the mid-morning rush began to pick up, Milo went for a wander among the shelves, scurrying underneath them to watch the people browsing greetings cards and school supplies. He noticed Susan storming around the place, picking up after those who'd moved display items or returned things to the wrong shelves. Her face wore a stern frown that made it look as though it was carved from stone, sharp creases and narrow eyes that made people take a step back when they saw her coming. Milo saw her walk around the corner of the aisle he was watching, holding a new box of HB pencils, just as a kid of about 7 years old careened into her. The little girl fell backwards and her mum rushed towards her, while Susan, who was startled, threw the box of pencils into the air. They didn't go very high, but they landed on the floor in a pencil explosion, each of them seeming to flee the box in different directions as if they were afraid of the manager's reaction. The little girl had hurt her arm, and she was crying. Her mother comforted her. Susan shot the girl a look that quite plainly said, "Which way you going, stupid child?" as she dropped down to the floor and started to gather the pencils, sweeping her hand under the lowest shelf, sweeping out pencils, dust, and whatever had been lost under there in the past decade. Milo looked at the little girl. He felt very sorry for her. Kids zipped around the shop all day, despite numerous signs asking parents to control their offspring. As far as Milo was concerned, it was normal for children to run around and wreak havoc. How else could they learn to take risks? He had never known anyone as strict as these shopkeepers. As he was finishing this train of thought, he turned to walk to a different aisle and found himself looking at a pencil. The next moment, without any warning, Susan's huge hand swept beneath the shelf, sweeping the pencil and Milo out into the open. and Milo found himself staring up into the manager's surprised, yet still angry-looking face. For a moment it was as though everything had stopped. There was a small crowd gathered around the little girl, who were quite plainly trying to ignore the obnoxious manager. Susan was the only one looking at Milo. As time began to speed up again, a wicked smile spread across her already unpleasant face. Milo turned to see Avery rush round the corner, and he felt a spark of hope, but he quickly realised she was looking at the little girl. "Avery!" he yelled, but no sooner had he opened his mouth than Susan's huge hand grabbed him and stuffed him roughly into her jacket pocket as she rose to her feet. All he could do was watch in the moments before he disappeared into the darkness as Avery turned away, saying, "Hang on, I'll get an ice pack." He saw her scan the floor, looking for him, but there was nothing he could do. Susan kept a tight grip on him as she walked off to the staff room, with something of an unusual spring in her step. Milo wriggled and writhed, but it was no use. He thought he heard her giggle and he burned with anger. He bit her finger as hard as he could. She pulled him from her pocket and dropped him into a gin glass on the staff room table and sat on a chair beside it. He guessed that the glass was for general use, as it was emblazoned with glittery letters spelling out "Happy 21st birthday to you," and he seriously doubted that Susan was anywhere near 21. "Is that all you've got, little bug?" she almost sang in a patronising tone. No, it would have been much worse, but I was gagging so much from the smell in that pocket." "What do you keep in there, dead mice?" Susan laughed cruelly. "Very funny. Poor little bug. What's wrong? Can't fly out of your little prison?" "There's something seriously wrong with you, lady." "No, not with me. Look at you. So tiny, so adorable, so deliciously cute." Milo didn't like the way she was looking at him. He took an involuntary step backwards, but because of the curvature of the glass, he only succeeded in falling over. Susan reached over and took hold of Milo's foot between her finger and thumb. You really do look delicious." "Are you insane?" cried Milo. "You can't be serious." Susan grinned at him, baring her teeth. "Deadly serious," she murmured. She lifted Milo high up into the air and dangled him over her open mouth. As Milo gazed down into the open maw, he could see the sticky, wet surface of her tongue and feel her hot breath blowing over him. "Whoa, lady, at least clean your teeth before you eat me. Your breath stinks." Susan scowled. "You shouldn't be so rude to your new master, Bug. I won't be as nice as the last one. I won't let you wander off, either." "You are not my master. How dare you?" "Well, I'm not giving you back to Avery. Poor girl. She'll miss her cute little pet." Milo spat in Susan's face, but that just made her laugh as she dropped him back into the gin glass. "First off," he said forcefully, "I am not Avery's pet. And second, even though I'm not her pet, there's no way she's going to let you get away with this." Susan laughed almost like a child. Her delight was almost painful for Milo to look at. "And what's she going to do? Fight me? Such a twig of a girl. Maybe I'll snap her in half. I could practice with you." Milo gulped. But no. I'm going to have so much fun with you. Trust me. You'll either learn to love me, or you'll wish I'd just killed you. I guess the choice is yours. 12 o'clock came and went, and Avery began to get concerned. Sonny had arrived for his afternoon shift and was meant to be taking over from her now, but normally Milo would have shown up a little before 12, so that she could stow him safely in her pocket until they were outside for their lunchtime walk. Now it was 12:07, and there was no sign of Milo. Avery, go have your lunch. I've got this, Sonny urged her. She couldn't think of any reasonable reason to stay behind the counter, so she thanked him and moved out into the shop. She checked the window, scanning the display and making like she was tidying it up. Milo, she hissed. Milo, are you here? There was no reply and no movement. She felt her heart rate quicken. She walked slowly up and down the aisles, scanning the floor and quietly calling for her friend. Sonny was watching her with concern, but he didn't say anything. Suddenly, Susan appeared in front of her and she jumped, startled. Have you lost something, Avery? No, she murmured. Are you sure? She didn't wait for an answer, but instead leaned in closer to Avery's face. You'll never find him again. You should take better care of your pets. And with that, she walked away. Avery burst into tears. She ran to the staff bathroom and sobbed in panic. I knew I shouldn't let him wander around. What was I thinking? Now Susan's got him, and she's bound to hurt him. What have I done? What have I done? It took her a few minutes to calm down. When she'd finally stopped crying and gone out of panic mode, she dried her eyes, blew her nose, washed her face, and went into practical mode. If she had any hope of finding Milo, she would have to look for him. She left the bathroom and walked through the vacant staff room. Peering out into the shop, she could see that Susan had been called to the counter to help Sonny with the usual lunchtime rush, and she couldn't help but thank God that it was Saturday. Susan would never have worked through lunch on any other day of the week. She closed the door and turned to look at the staff room. Unless Susan had hidden him somewhere on her person, which she was rather concerned about, then she must have stashed Milo somewhere in here. Unless she took him out to her car. Would she risk leaving him in the car? He was hardly likely to hotwire the engine, but what if he suffocated in there? Would Susan even care? What if she'd killed him already? Just as Avery felt the panic begin to rise in her chest again, she heard a small noise coming from the staff lockers. She approached them cautiously. Suddenly there was a sharp bang from the inside of Susan's locker door. I can hear you out there, you monster. I know you're out there. You let me out right now, or I swear you're going to pay for this. I'm going to hurt you, you nasty, evil... Milo? Avery? Let me out of here, quick, before Madame Doom comes back to squish me. But I don't have the key. It must be in her jacket. So go and get it. No, I can't. She's wearing her jacket. Then break the door down, Ave. Help me out here. What do you think I am, the Incredible Hulk? These things are built to be secure. I can't just break it down. Well, can you pick the lock? I don't think so. I've never known how to do that. I'm usually quite an honest person. You know, when you're not turning me into a thief. Milo kicked the door in frustration. I could unlock it myself from in here if I could reach the damn lock. Is there nothing in there that you could climb up? Her bag is in here, but it's at the back of the locker. I tried, but I can't move it. Both were silent for a moment as they contemplated the situation. Avery glanced at the clock on the wall. She only had about 6 minutes before she was due back on shift, at which point Susan would come off the counter and probably back in here to torment Milo. She scrutinised the door, desperately trying to spot a weakness that she could exploit. An idea slowly dawned on her. Milo, I think I know what to do. I'll be right back, just wait here. Wait here? What else am I meant to do? But Avery was already out of earshot. She disappeared into the storeroom where extra stock was kept, and when she returned, she was opening a packet of colourful paper clips. She subconsciously chose a blue one and began straightening it out. Milo, listen. I'm going to slide a wire through the gap in the door towards the bottom. Grab hold of it and I'll slide it up towards the lock. When you're high enough, you can unlock the door. That's brilliant! Nice one, Ave. We've got this. Avery slid the wire into the tiny gap and felt him grab hold of it almost immediately. She slowly drew the wire up the door until it hit the lock, and then she felt Milo let go of the wire as he transferred his weight to the locking mechanism. The mechanism was an L-shaped bar with the horizontal line holding the door in locked position. Milo needed to push the vertical bar into a horizontal position in order to unlock the door. He threw himself into the task, pushing and pulling and heaving the bar. It was stiff and it didn't seem to want to cooperate. Just as he was beginning to give up, the mechanism gave and the door sprung open. Milo hanging from the now horizontal bar and clinging on for dear life. As the door swung out as far as it could go, it jolted, and Milo cried out as he began plummeting towards the floor. A moment later, he collided with the palm of Avery's hand, which she automatically closed over him. The pair breathed a heavy sigh of relief as Avery lifted her hand towards her face to look Milo over and check that he was okay. That was far too close. If I hadn't got you back, I don't know what she would have done to you. You've got to be more careful, Milo. Milo sat up in her hand and raised his eyebrows at her. Listen, Avery. First of all, what's all this if you hadn't got me back? The way I see it, I did all the work here. All you did was stick a wire through a door. Are you serious right now? He ignored her. And second of all, I told you I'd be fine. What are you so worried about? He laughed at the incredulous look on her face and winked. Just kidding. Thanks, Ave. No problem, she said, smiling back at him. Oh, I think there is a problem, Avery. Avery turned in surprise to see Susan standing in the doorway. She marched towards Avery angrily, and Avery took a step backwards, colliding with the lockers and instinctively closing her fingers over Milo again. Do you think you can get away with breaking into my locker and stealing my property, young lady? I didn't steal anything of yours, Avery snapped back, less than convincingly. Oh, really? Well then, why don't you just open up your fist and hand over that little bug to me? No, you can't have him. You will give him back to me right now, or you're fired. Do you hear me? Milo was scared when he heard her threat. Avery needed this job, he knew that. And what was he to her, really? She'd only known him for a week, and what did it matter to her if she gave him up for her job? Avery straightened up to her full height and leaned towards Susan angrily. First of all, she said sharply, mimicking Milo's favourite phrase, that's my friend you're talking about, and he's not a bug. And secondly, Susan, you can't fire me, because I quit. I'm not working for you for a day longer. And with that, Avery turned to her locker, opened it and grabbed her handbag. As she turned away from the locker to leave, Susan threw herself at her, trying to wrestle Milo from her hand. Avery dropped her bag on the floor and punched Susan in the face, causing her to cry out in pain and stumble backwards. Milo clapped enthusiastically. "Nice shot, Avery. That's a good black eye for you." "You have no idea how long I've wanted to do that," she murmured, as she picked up her bag, threw on her coat, and lowered Milo into her pocket. She said goodbye to a somewhat surprised Sonny and walked out of the back door of the shop, heading home. While the pair ate their evening meal, Milo asked, "Why did you do that for me, Ave? Why did you give up your job for me? I know how much you needed it, and I haven't exactly been the most pleasant roommate since we met, have I?" Avery smiled at him. "Milo, there are other jobs out there. I'll get another one, eventually. But I'll never have another friend like you." "You mean it?" he asked. "Of course. I'll never meet anyone quite as arrogant and condescending as you, Milo. You're a real treasure." She winked at him and Milo laughed. "Now all I need to feel complete is a new job." "Yep, and a manager you don't want to punch in the face," Milo agreed.